hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Brisbane Literary Mafia, where Cass Moriarty and I discuss writing and writing process with another Brisbane-based or ex-Brisbane writer. And today we have the wonderful Trent Dalton with us, who needs no introduction because really it's all about Trent Dalton at the moment. And Trent has just put out his second book, All Our Shimmering Skies. And Cass is going to hold that up for you. Cass, you've got that there?
Beautiful.
There we go. So All Our Shimmering Skies by Trent Dalton has just hit the shelves and is racing out the door of all the bookshelves. And we're here today to talk to Trent, not about what's in the book, but about what's behind the book, because Trent's first book was a runaway success. So we had, I think out of nowhere, possibly, Trent, you didn't expect the reaction that you got when you first hit the shelves, did you?
Oh, not at all, Krissy. And thanks to you both for having me. My favourite Queenslanders are something like Jonathan Thurston, Alfie Langer, and then you two. So it's like you're in my top 5 at least. So it's pretty cool to be talking to you. Krissy, no, I thought 5 people would read that book, and literally my mum, my 3 older brothers, Joel, Ben, and Jesse, and my wife Fiona. Like that's it. Because the book was so it was so ambitious and strange, really. Like it's a story of a kid who gets messages in a secret room from a red telephone from the 1980s, and it's from a deep well of emotion from my very own life. And I thought, yeah, maybe that has a sort of a bit of a connection for people. Like, oh wow, that journo guy has perhaps had an interesting life in the 1980s. But the book goes to some strange places, and so I didn't expect it to really catch fire like it did. And I've had a bit of time to think about why that was, and I look back and I go, yeah, well, it's filled with love and hope as much as, you read the blurb on that book, and it was pretty dark when people read that blurb, and that blurb said things like, heroin dealers, criminals. It didn't say much about hope at all, and it needed, well, you know what? It needed amazing bookshops like Avid Reader to genuinely put it in people's hands and say, look, even forget the blurb, just read it and make it to the end, and you'll realize the great secret, which is, I'm just saying a universal thing that we all know, which is love is all you need, and it's all certainly I needed in the 1980s. And yeah, so I was so glad that it caught on, yeah. But I still absolutely right, Krissy. I just had no idea that it would do so in such a kind of way.
So unexpectedly, boy swallowed the entire universe.
Literally.
That's so funny.
And so, well, that is another story, which I'm sure that you've talked in depth about. But what we're going to talk about now is the time between Boy Swallows Universe and All Our Shimmering Skies. And I will kick us off by just talking about that thing that many writers know about, which is called the second book syndrome, where we hear about this all the time, where, you've written your first book, which you could have taken, 10, 20 years ruminating about, and there is your first book, and you've put everything in it for your everything from your entire life, somehow encapsulated in this one book, and then it's out, and you've kind of drained yourself of everything that you had to give. How do you then go about trying to write this second book?
Oh, it's such a great question, Krissy, and it's so good to talk about, because it was sort of this question defined my past 2 years. And not only was I drained of, all writers need to write from an emotional place, especially me, because I don't think my craft is anywhere near some of those amazing Australian writers that are on, bookshelves across this country. But I do think one thing I can bring, and it's one thing I've always brought to my journalism, which is my heart and soul, and just really just put so much of myself in there, and kind of, there's been journalistic pieces that I've written where I've literally cried when I've written. I'm sure you guys have written words where you've cried, and it's such a vain thing to do, but it's so powerful too. It's when you're onto something. And I did have a great fear that it's like Man, it's like Jeff Buckley writing like Grace and just going all or nothing. He put everything into that. And I love those works of art where people have gone, I'm just letting rip on this one. And I do think I was put on this earth to write that book. I think I think I'll be answering questions about Boy Swallows Universe for maybe the rest of my life. And I'm really fine with that, because that Eli Bell kid that I created to kind of drag me through all my baggage and all the stuff that was in the back of my mind really helped me a lot. But you do worry, absolutely. Like, oh, well, all right. But also I have this whole massive self-doubt, imposter syndrome that comes from the world of journalism, right? Where you have a very healthy disregard for your qualities as a writer, and you don't realize that you still don't believe that you can string a bunch of sentences together, and you receive a nice letter from someone going, keep going and keep going harder, and you get amazed. And I'd put those things up on my wall to remind myself that, okay, I just belong here. Like I had for so long, guys, never put writer at the bottom of my email, because I just didn't even know. I wasn't quite qualified to be a journalist, because a journalist is like George Negus, or Hedley Thomas, or, but I wasn't a writer. A writer's Tim Winton or Richard Flanagan or you
You
guys.
can put writer now pretty safely.
Well, see, that's funny, Cass. And that's the funny thing. And I know I just sort of always felt like, oh, is that too highfalutin for me to put? And so literally, as granular as, what do I put on my bloody email? What do I put on my passport? Who am I? Who am I? It cut to the heart of who I was. And so this second book would cut to that, right to that. And it was something like, even though I had so many stories, it was like, what was the one that is going to sort of say something about me? And would I even be worthy of being a guy who writes multiple books anyway? So do I just go, hey, everyone, thank you so much for reading Boy Swallows Universe, and I'm done now. I'll just go back to my little pigeonhole, and I'll go back to my life, my day job as a journo, and I'll thank you all for giving me the most amazing 2-year ride. And, man, I'm looking at a woman, Krissy, you sent me the most beautiful, I don't know if you recall, about a year ago, I think it was, or maybe even more. And it was right. And when you talk about the Brisbane Literary Mafia, I do think it is a beautiful thing. And you guys kind of, I haven't given anything to that world, but you guys have been so kind. And, it's something I want to give back to so much, because just by the nature of me coming from Brizzy meant I had the pleasure of just, brushing shoulders with brilliant writers like you two, and kind of learning so much and so much encouragement. And you sent me the most beautiful letter, Krissy, which was, all right, man, I know what you're thinking. I know here's the tone. It was the tone of, I know what you're thinking. I know you think, I know right now you're thinking you're an imposter. I mean, you didn't go into all this, but this was how I took it, Krissy. It was just someone who's been there, done that, and done it time and time again, right? Every time you go back to that white abyss of the blank page, I think we must all face this stuff. And I reckon maybe every book's second album syndrome, second book syndrome, but this one was pretty heavy because it was doing crazy things, and you'd sent the most beautiful email about just extinguish it all, man, and just you're here to write stories, and the same reason we're all here to write stories, and because we're here to learn more about ourselves, and there's more for you to say, Trent, is what you were saying, Krissy. And I thought, coming from you, it was deeply, deeply moving. So I thank you so much for that. And to be talking to you about this now is really, it's kind of perfect and cyclical, because okay, so then at some point you've just got to go, all right, I do belong here. And enough people have told me that. And literally, you're getting messages from 14-year-old, like there's a girl I went and spoke to out at Logan, and a school I spoke to, and then she sent me a direct message over Instagram. She just direct messaged me, and it was, Trent, you wouldn't have seen me. I didn't speak to you, but I was sitting in the 10 rows back at that talk you were giving, where you were talking about how it gets good, and how don't worry if you're some Brisbane kid on the fringes and you're in some really shit situation right now, but just hold on, because all you need sometimes is time, and you will turn 18 and you will get to write your own story soon. And she sent this really deep email or message just saying, hey, like she was on the knife edge, you know, she was on the ropes, and she just said, thank you for showing me there's some light. And that, it's like, holy man, get over yourself, Trent, stop your nonsense, you know. It's just like, man, what a first world problem. Could there be a worse first world problem if Trent Dalton was going to start going, what do I write next, you know, just get back there. And essentially that was,
I think that, you know, there's so much pressure after the first book, especially if the first book's a success, as yours was. But I think that what you've done probably to help with the writing of the second book is that you've stuck to the similar themes. So even though the stories are completely different, the themes are still hope, optimism, overcoming trauma and tragedy. That's obviously your thing that you're going to gravitate towards, I guess.
Oh, Cass, that's so insightful. Like, honestly, because and it was that letters from that 14-year-old girl and stuff that crystallized that for me. It's like, all right, mate, get over yourself. You're here to sort of speak about, like, I do think I've written both of these books secretly for bloody 13, 14-year-old Trent Dalton, to sort of just go, this kid I was, that I became much more complex, and, you know, at 40, ego kicks in, or whatever. All these things come and mess up a human brain. But my 13-year-old self, guys, was pretty, I think you would have liked him. You know, he was a really sweet kid, and just innocent and kind of untainted, and I did have the magic, you know, and life comes in and bashes the magic out of us. And Cass, you're so right. I just went and wrote again, you know, whilst Voicewaller's universe was so openly kind of me. This is just one big metaphor for me growing up in Brackenridge in the early 1990s. You know, that's all it really was. And you know, the villains in that piece are men that I saw at midnight in kitchens, and the heroes in that piece are the Brackenridge mums that I'd see having to survive for the benefit of their kids, despite the fact their husbands bloody bashing them up at night. And, you know, I mean, hardcore stuff, but wrapped around this wild adventure of Molly Hook, who's going on this great quest story, you know, in the top end. And once I hooked onto that and realized a reasonably comfortable space, like, I do think I have something to say and still something emotional to say. And just because I put these big rocks that I was carrying around, emotional rocks, just because I put them in a 400-page book called Voicewaller's Universe, doesn't mean the rocks still don't exist. That doesn't mean they just dissolved inside me, you know. And so it's sort of all of that. And once I hooked onto that, and a story also that I knew would be fun to write, you know, just the sheer fun of writing a quest story, which is in my DNA. As a kid, I was reading those stories to escape from whatever stuff was going on down the hallway. Just the sheer fun of that, and drawing on the Odyssey and Homer and all this stuff that I just love, take me away from myself and some of that world of Voicewaller's universe. I was still on the circuit of really, like, we pushed that. I mean, everyone knows we pushed that in a big way, that book. And, you know, I'm sure people got sick of me talking about that book, but it was really good to dive into, to go back into the past and find a Japanese fighter pilot and find a girl, you know, the power of femininity, and and write something that my girls would read. And so it was suddenly get out of my head, even though I am in my head, like I just said.
It is very hard to get you to talk, Trent, and to open up. I find that's quite difficult.
How many questions are we on? 2? And what, we're 20 minutes in. I'm so sorry. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's all nervous energy, I swear. It's nervous energy. That's all it is.
But I would like to ask about that kind of, that moment where you have to, you know, put aside, you know, and the reason that I wrote that email to you originally was because I saw this rocketing success of this book, which, you know, was winning awards, and was suddenly, you know, everyone was talking about the sales figures, and it was this giant thing. And I was having a panic attack, thinking about what I would be feeling if I were you. And I kind of had this terrible kind of emotional transference of going, oh my God, it's actually, you know, this, like, I know you said, you know, get over it, first world problems, but it's actually the success and that trajectory of success. With it comes this incredible vertigo of kind of going, I am going to let everybody down now, because I have this kind of giant mountain of people who are wanting me to succeed. And being on the top of that peak is just horrific, and horrified me. And I wonder how you shut out the noise of that, because I don't know how I would have been able to shut that noise of that first book to be able to sit down and to kind of actually really focus on book 2.
And Krissy, here's another aspect to the vertigo. I haven't ever spoken about this actually, but it's because you said that word vertigo, because the higher up you go, there's still a question in the back of my mind. Is there something unseemly about finding success out of something that for many people who were in the 1980s in that story, that is just kind of sad. And so it's like, I don't know, it's, is there something exploitative or, so I was battling with that stuff at the same time of like, oh God, oh, look at this thing. And I'll constantly...
guilt, is that what we call it? Sort of.
Oh, well, exactly. And then I'm calling my bros and I'm like, hey guys, I was just constantly asking them, am I managing this okay? Like, please pull me up whenever you hear me talk like a dick on the radio or in a podcast, or if I say,
I'm sure they did.
And they did, and they were really and did it in a healthy way, like really good. And in that, great way, my oldest brother would just go, Trent, you're not even owning half of it the way you should. So just shut up and just own every bit of it. But still, you've got to talk about those things and not hurt people, and so, which is why I have to make sure, like, every time I talk, like, this book is about the warriors in my life and my tribute to my mom and all that, because that's me having to go, oh man, I'm wrestling with that thing that I needed to write about. I needed to write and get that out of my system in order to write anything more for the rest of my life, if in a novel sense. Like, I had to write about these people. And then you're right, though. Then it kind of goes to the top of the mountain, and I'm just going, oh man. So the next thing I did, and I think it was really a really important thing to do, I got this great editor, Catherine Milne, and I just said, look, can I just sit you down and tell you the entire story of All Ash and Ring Skies, right? So before I even write, I'm so mixed up with emotions here on where I go next, right? And I just sat her down and told her the entire, the bone structure but like literally every turn, every twist, just map it out. And so we can all be kind of like, because I know, right, that you guys are expecting whatever it is. And I've signed this, like, I signed a 2-book deal for not much money, but suddenly all these things became high pressure. And so there was no pressure on Boy Swallows Universe. Like, what a great space, man. No one cares. Like, if ever like, already they go, I'm already kind of ahead because everyone's going, I don't expect anything from Journo guy, so that's fine. And then, so that's a really freeing space. And I wrote from that space of 5 people are going to read this, so that's fine. And I'll just hit it for the fence and go big. But it really helped just saying to Catherine, look, just so everyone knows what we're embarking on, here's the story. And it's wild and it's ambitious. And, I don't know whether I'm qualified to write such a story, but will you go there with me and will you support it? And just tell them and just be so fully open every step of the way. And that really did help from just an emotional standpoint about that expectation thing. It's like, okay, and then, okay, here's the draft. And then beautiful Catherine sends back like, holy shit, oh my God. And I don't even think she was, for her, hopefully not, it wasn't all about like, we want you to match it or anything. It's just like, just write us a good book. And then you can get over that bloody second book thing. But she got back. I remember it, my wife and kids and I were just at the back, my wife was over Boy Swallows Universe, just done, and it's like, let's go traveling, done. Like, just a journo has to just file it, do your job, file it. Hopefully the story doesn't get spiked. And in this case, a novel doesn't get spiked, as in like totally sent back and just, or just spiked, like a literal, shaft of metal stuck through the middle of it. But they didn't. And then I went off on this, we're overseas. And I got this amazing email from Catherine just going, hey, I just want you to know, this is publishable. This is all right, and I was so much more relieved about that email than I was with Boy Swallows Universe. There was nothing at stake with Boy Swallows Universe. I wouldn't have cared. I swear to you, and I hope it's not coming out false, but if she came back to me on Boy Swallows Universe and said, "Oh man, this is crazy. We can't publish this," I would have gone, "Totally understand." But it was so good for me anyway. You know what I mean? And so there's so much writing on that kind of second Catherine Milne email, and it was beautiful.
I wanted to ask you, Trent, I'm just going to interrupt you because otherwise we're going to be here all day.
It'll never stop. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's good. We're here to listen to you, but I did want to ask one question.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, because Boy Swallows Universe is so semi-autobiographical and includes so many aspects of your real life, even though you've fictionalized it a lot. I feel that with All Our Shimmering Skies, it's an even better book. I think, well, my theory is because you haven't been hampered by that thought in your head that I'm writing about real people and I have to do justice to these real people, and some of them are still alive. Whereas with All Our Shimmering Skies, it's complete imagination, and so you've just been able to let go. Is that a fair assumption?
You are so insightful, Cass. I mean, I'm serious. Like,
I know. What can I say?
It's such a deep. I mean, I don't even know if you've ever. I mean, you wouldn't have heard these conversations because they're between my mum and I on my back deck in the northern suburbs of Brisbane. So no one else was there. You weren't there, I'm sure. But I remember her saying, "Trent, it's really beautiful what you did, and you were so kind about me, and I mean, that's from her. So I think she wouldn't mind me saying it, and I remember a really good mate of mine, Brian, just one of those truth teller friends who just don't dick around. And he just went, "Oh boy, you were," that mum character in that book is such a saint, or she's so saintly. Like she's almost too passively kind of angelic. And that's me looking at this incredible woman in my life. And my mummy, she'd be fine with me saying this. And she says it. She just goes, "Oh, Trent, it's so sweet," and it does come from me just honoring her and kind of just going.
Did you find it was a lot more freeing in this book to not have, to not be writing about real people?
Completely, because then suddenly you can write a more rounded character like Greta. Like Greta Mays in that book is so much more rounded with flaws and faults, and because I genuinely, in the character of Frankie Bell in Boy Swallows Universe, which is essentially my mum that I'm drawing on, I can't taint her with anything because I'm trying to show the world all of her amazing qualities, but forgetting to just put the realistic stuff in, that she has vulnerabilities and faults and flaws. And so suddenly you're not building on anything. It's pure imagination. If coming from a well of deep emotion, but just pure imagination, Cass, you're so right. And then suddenly, man, on the villain side of things, you can just go to town and go, what? All right, I do have something to say about Australian men that I've seen who have turned true love to true hate overnight. I'm fascinated with that profound transition that Australian men in particular are capable of doing. And I think it's that transition that it propels a lot of issues across Australia. And okay, there's something I want to say about that, but I don't have to hold back at all. I don't have to pay fealty to anyone. There were three men in Boy Swallows Universe I was kind of paying fealty to, and which is why people go, "Oh, wow, that's so interesting how you wrote those criminals with," but they're real life people, like they're people, and I have to sort of pay respect to them as well, because I did care about them in real life, but I get criticism from even my older brothers for going like, "Man, that guy was a scumbag, that guy who you're right," and I knew him better than you knew him, and so it's sort of like, and it's really interesting how you sort of how I've processed some of the stuff, but exactly.
I wonder, from here on, Trent, you're kind of known now for doing books which are full of heart, magic realism, and that with this kind of with the hope and with the love. Do you ever feel like you want to kind of break out of that? I mean, you've only done 2 books now. Well, 3 really, but the non-fiction as well. But, how do you feel like you want to break out of that mold in some way? Is there some part of you that wants to, do something completely opposite to that in the future? And would you do it, or would you have to, have a pseudonym to be able to write something in a different vein?
Yeah. Like I would love to write a, my third book. I want to write a love story. I want to write this book that's sort of more about kind of the wonders of love. But you know, I don't know. Yeah, well, you know that. Yeah, but it's dark as well. But yeah, I mean, you're so right, Krissy. Like, it's so funny how quickly you become this sort of thing. And with this second book, I think people have already sort of said, even I'm just getting beautiful messages from people, and I love every bit of it where they go, God, it's still. You can tell it's by the guy who wrote Boy Swallows Universe. But I would love to write a book where people go, wow, I did not know that the guy who wrote Boy Swallows Universe could have written that. And I guess that's probably a challenge that I have to kind of climb a hill too, you know, and I'd love to do that, you know. And I think the third one I'm going to write is still, people would probably go, yep, but it doesn't have, you know, I'm going to, you know, and I don't even intend to go into this world of magic realism. It's so funny that I just go into that because it's the way I think sometimes, and it's the way I saw that NT landscape in some of my research. I saw it with a magical eye, but influenced in the end the writing. But yeah, you're so right. I mean, man, I'd love to write a horror novel. I'd love to write horror. I am such a horror fan. Don't even get
it.
started.
Do it.
Like a
psychological horror, that would be fantastic.
You know,
just
right?
be a chameleon like Krissy and just write one book in every genre.
Yeah, Krissy, but that's inspiring. I love the way you do that, you know, and I'd love to write, man, like, what, you know, throw sex into something, you know, like I'd never put, you know what I mean? And just like, you know, I love the way you can do that.
Erotica, that's next on your list.
Erotica,
crime.
Right. My wife would find that hilarious. If,
I'm
you know,
looking
she'd be
forward
like,
to
oh, you're really qualified.
Horror. I'm looking forward to the
erotic horror. Yeah.
Erotic horror. Erotic. Watch out, peeps. Watch out, people. It's coming. Erotic
coming
horror.
to a good bookstore near you.
Challenge accepted, Krissy and Cass. Yep.
Excellent.
Yep.
Look, this has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I am aware that we're going to have to go to our recommended reading time.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I'll do very quickly.
No, so I'm sorry for taking up so much of your
Oh,
time.
no, it's been fantastic. I just wanted to show everybody look at my limited edition Avid Reader All Our Shimmering Skies t-shirt.
Oh, I love that.
I'm so privileged to have with Molly Hook and Bert the Shovel.
I want to
I have one too, but I look very crap in it, so I'm not wearing it.
I tell you what I'd love to do is a graphic novel with that amazing illustrator you guys know. And she is so gifted, and just turn that into like a little graphic novel just of Molly, you know, just doing a thing with Bert, just getting in little adventures with Bert. And,
graphic novel would be great. I can't imagine that they won't do a graphic novel of both of your fiction. I can imagine that's going to be the next project too.
That'd actually be amazing. Like, I'm such a massive fan. Like, Eddie Campbell, you know, Brisbane guy is just like a hero of mine, you know, and it's like, yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll talk about this later. I've got some ideas.
Cool. Yeah. Great.
But onto our recommendations of Australian writing. So apart from All Our Shimmering Skies, Cass has a couple of recommends.
I do have some other ones that I've been reading this month, which I'll just quickly go through. The first one I wanted to talk about is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. This is kind of like Fleabag in a book. So if you love the TV show Fleabag, you will love this book. It's hilarious, bleak, dark, insightful, really sharply observed. It's about a woman who's sort of failing at her life, but it's not your 20-something usual woman. She's late 30s, early 40s. And then she discovers that there might be a reason behind why she's failing at life. So that one, and I just saw yesterday, was recommended by Anne Patchett. So, big things happening for that book. The second book is Love Clancy by our friend Richard Glover. This is just such a sweet book for our current pandemic times. It's written, of course, by his dog Clancy, who has a very dim view of Richard, who he calls man, and who he frankly doesn't think is very smart, and takes quite a lot of training to be able to do anything properly. But Love Clancy is letters from Clancy back to his parents in the bush, and it's funny and it's sweet, and it's also very wise, as Richard's writing always is.
I'm going to interrupt you there, and now we're talking about animals talking. I want to recommend Laura Jean Mackay's book, The Animals in That Country, which I'm sure is not as sweet as the dog in Glover's book at all. I think Sue the dingo is much sharper and much more likely to rip your heart out, literally. But if you want, animals talking, goodness, that book has completely changed my mind and changed the way I think about animals and changed the way I think about writing, in fact. So yeah, do get on.
Yeah, that's a great book too. Yeah. Crime, this month's Crime, Trust by Chris Hammer, which has just come out. Again, about Martin Scarsdale. So this is the third in the series. This one's set more in Sydney, and it's more about his partner Mandy and her past. So in the first book, she was just sort of a fleeting character. She was more developed in the second book. But in this one, he digs deep into her character and her past in a really compelling way. Just great Australian noir with trust. Two more, Flyway, which is a debut novel, which is getting rave reviews around the world. Now, this is a very unusual, it's a novella actually, so it's quite short. It's strange. It's been called Australian Gothic. It's ethereal. There's a bit of magic realism. The thing that I love most about it is the writing. The prose itself is absolutely beautiful on a sentence level. Every word, every sentence is just beautiful. So that's Flyaway by Kathleen Jennings. And last but not least, I have a non-fiction book that has just come out, and I know Avid has it on their shelves. It's called Rivers. It's by Ian Hoskins, and it's, as you can imagine, about Australia's rivers. So this is an absolutely gorgeous hardback copy, perfect for a Christmas present, if anyone in your life is a nature lover. And it's all about the rivers of Australia, the history, the Indigenous history, the connection with the land, what we do with our waterways, water security, sustainability. John Watson writes the foreword, and he writes, "Our lives are so bound up with rivers, it is ruinous not to love them." Okay. And it's got beautiful, beautiful photos.
This looks like a great Christmas gift, actually.
Really good Christmas gift. There's maps. There's what else have we got? We've got Aboriginal, early Indigenous drawings. There's a really great one. There's people with very big fish.
Oh, I like that.
Love that in a book.
A big fish.
And just drawings and diagrams. So it's really it's a hefty, really, that would make a really nice present for somebody who's into.
And we do have to remind people that although Christmas seems a long way away, of course, yes, supply chains are strained because of COVID. And so if you do want to order particular books for Christmas, I think it is about time to start thinking about that right now, because they will not arrive in time. I've just finished Gail Jones's Our Shadows, and I'd like to recommend that to people as well. It's on a sentence level, as you said, with Kathleen Jennings. This book is stunning. It's an exquisite, beautiful gem of a book, and I think people should pick that up. I hope you've been reading some good stuff, Trent. Have you been enjoying?
Well, Krissy, sorry, you're going to hate this, and this was not set up, but I have finally had time to start reading this little beautiful package here. It's a little book called The Three Burials of Lottie Kneen by the one and only Krissy Kneen. And I've just started and because I've been on this whirlwind book thing, but this is the benefits of being in the publishing world. You get early manuscripts of amazing books, and let me tell you, it is written with so much heart, dear listeners and readers. It's written with wit, an incredible journalistic eye, and it's just got so much depth and wonder. And I think this is going to be amazing, and we'll be hearing so much about this book next year, won't we, Cass?
Absolutely, definitely.
But thank you so much, Krissy. I'm sorry to bring it up, and you did not at all ask me to do that. I'm sorry to embarrass you, but it's absolutely my week, and so thank you for making my week.
Without the pandemic, I would have been on my book tour too. So that's was originally a September release, but now it's going to be May. So I'm just kind of taking a breath.
Take a breath. Brace
it's
yourself.
Lucky it wasn't September because you would have been competing with Trent. So.
Oh, that would have been
100 other books.
Yeah, big month. Yeah.
Look, this has been an absolute delight. I am so glad we got to speak to both of you, and to remind people that, Brisbane, which is so often overlooked in the literary scene in Australia, it's all about Sydney and Melbourne. And look, I really have to say that Queensland writers, not only have we done incredibly well here in Queensland, but we've also left the state and become the great Sydney or Melbourne writers of the future as well. And we've had some of our interstate writers on here who are, Queensland born and bred and did their training up here and have had to leave because the scene is in Sydney and Melbourne. And it's just so wonderful to kind of remind people that Brisbane and Queensland is actually, a powerhouse of literary talent.
The scene is here now. This is where it's at.
So much going on. Yeah, there really is. Yeah.
And we have the wonderful Anita Heist is going to be joining us next month.
Oh, wow. Brilliant.
Anita is just an amazing writer of fiction and non-fiction. She's an editor of non-fiction, and she's also now writing a play. And you've been involved in a play being made of your book, Trent.
Little play, yeah, little thing, yeah. It's it's incredible. Don't get me started, Krissy. You'll be here for another half hour.
I know it's a different art. I've been involved in playwriting recently and remembered how very, very difficult it is to write a play. I take my hat off to anyone who does it at the time, because it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. But so Anita Heist next month, and
excellent.
And I'd like to thank you both for joining us.
Thank you so much, Trent. Here's your lovely book again. Just a reminder for those of you who may not have seen it plastered across the world.
Just in case.
In the last week.
What a beautiful
from Avid.
Oh yeah.
The sign.
Thank you, Avid. We had the best launches, and it was just Avid. When you talk about that scene that's here, if there's a sun for all of us planets to revolve around, it's Avid Reader, isn't it? I mean, we know that that's the case, and that place has built so much for all of us. So thank you guys for this amazing podcast. It's been a pleasure to be a part of it.
Thanks for talking to us about writing a second book, Trent, and hopefully we've given some inspiration to all those people who are struggling with that second book syndrome.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. Go for it. If you're thinking about it, go for it. Don't hold back. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.